Hey everyone. So, surprise is Dan is off at the beach with his grandbabies, and Lindsay helping a friend. So it's all about family today. So it turns out that I am at the helm of the podcast today. So we're going to leave it up to you guys to determine topics. So open forum. So I see that we're already talking about stargazing. Looks like Country says that the closest town is 5 miles away from him, and that town only has 1,700 people. I don't even have 1,400 at the town I live in. So, woo, not very big. So, what else do you guys got going on? Do you got some topics for us to discuss? Because I have a whole slew of topics. One in particular that we were going to talk about today. It was already going to be like Lindsay and I today. So, one of the topics that we're going to discuss was taking like memes or reels and dealing with some of the crazy stuff that people say about men, boys, and just really taking a lighthearted approach at it. So, hi Maggie. Country, sorry to hear that you have a bad connection. One of the things that came up on my Instagram feed was this woman, and it was very, very. I think that men cannot be in public spaces unless they have documentation that they have been vetted by 5 women under their own volition, free from coercion, that can be called and those references checked. And I was like, what? And that's crazy to me. What is going on with the world today? What is going on with the world today? Holy buckets. How did one person get there? That's crazy to me. So, do you guys have some feedback for me on that one? Because I'd be kind of curious to see what your thoughts on this are. Just some of the crazy stuff could last a lifetime. That is true, Country. That is true. Oh, Lord have mercy. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So I've been kind of on this kick lately. Curtis, I have a question about cheating. I believe I recall Dan saying in a video that there's a study that shows women actually cheat more, something like 27 to 23%. Know anything about that? So the hard part is, no, I don't know about that. The hard part is women usually have to have someone to cheat with, which means they're already going to be cheating with someone in a relationship that's already on the other side. So usually comes out to be about 50-50 from the numbers that we know and that we're aware of. I will say that there is a study out there, and this might be what he's referring to, that shows that women instigate cheating 23 to 27% more than men. So, eek. Yeah. Country, I did see that one. That one blew my mind. It's very, very odd. I don't understand this whole thing. I think what's happening is you get in. It's kind of like the city lights and being in the city. Well, I find that being in an urban area, it's really difficult sometimes because in an urban environment, we're much more apt to lean a certain way socially, which means we might be more apt to not be as personable or try to seek that in-person feel. A lot of people are more prone to have conversations over Zoom or over a phone or through text messages or through email correspondence social media messengers, stuff like that. And it's very impersonable. It's not very personable at all. It's very difficult to get that human connection. And I think that human connection is something that's really important. So I think that's part of the reason why people might say that men can't use public transportation as well, is because, well, the men that they're running into are not men that are of high quality or high caliber, and they're not giving up their seats or whatever. But then there's this double standard that women want men to be more chivalrous, and part of the problem is it's not reciprocated. So we run afoul with this quandary. So a 2-mile radius, and they're all 12 of them. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I know most of my 1,400 neighbors or so. So, and they're all within 2 miles. So yeah. Here's an interesting thing. I don't know that Dan necessarily likes James Sexton as much as I do, but I like James Sexton because it gives sort of this raw, unfiltered like feedback on how relationships and marriages should go as a divorce attorney, instead of focusing on not getting married, not doing this, not doing that. He tries to aspire to be truthful, open, and honest, and just have that unfiltered check valve. So one of these videos that, while I was in the course of researching some of this particular reel came up, and he said gay men are the best friends to have. They have high standards, they want to look good, and they're uninterested in drama and bullshit. You know what? I think there's a lot of truth to that. It also, I think, is another thing where people ask me my personal opinions on gay marriage. And to be honest with you, I've got no problem with it. I'll tell you why. In my opinion, state shouldn't be involved in marriage. State shouldn't be involved in divorce, and it should not be involved in child custody issues. They can be involved in child welfare issues. Sure, no problem there. I have a problem with the state getting involved in a lot of stuff. But here's the interesting thing. When you deal with divorces, child custody, and things like that, you're very interested in the statistics that it can show. And it shows that, the age-old thing where we talk about lesbians. Well, lesbian divorce rates are the highest, but lesbian domestic violence rates are the highest as well, substantially. Second place is heterosexuals, and it kind of goes into this like filtered thing where I go, okay, you have a component here that talks about a man and a woman coming together. And, when you evaluate that gay marriage is one of those things where we see they have the lowest divorce rate, but here's the other end of it. They also have the lowest domestic violence rate, and it's almost nil. It's almost zero. And the reason is men typically just don't care. When they're done, they're done. They want to go, and leave them the hell alone. That's what this comes to. With you guys, I'm preaching to the choir at this point, and I think that's the interesting thing here, is because when you're looking at it objectively, it does show that there tends to be a rudimentary problem centered around women objectively. So, when we talk about these sorts of things, one of the guests that Dan has had on his show runs Dad's Law School. And he talks about a lot of stuff, a lot of issues. He has a lot of Instagram photos, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of stuff. And one of the things I caught him saying just today in a video was it only takes one asshole to create a shitstorm. And that is so true. And when we look at it objectively, who's starting the shitstorm? Well, in a video that David was doing with one of his colleagues, he talked about how domestic violence allegations go criminally versus civilly. But he also talked about men versus women. And men are violent. Men, when men are the aggressor or men do the violence, the domestic violence, it is so much more brutal. It's awful because of the capability, their size, their strength, their power, all of those things. But part of that, especially how true, Steve, how true. One of the things that was pointed out is the emotional discourse that happens and the emotional abuse that exists day after day of perpetuating and insulting your other partner that is done by the woman. When we talk about character and reputation destruction, that's what women are kind of notorious for. That's the hard part, right? Because it eats on a person and grates on their soul. And, I tend to be more of the optimist. I try to hey, what can we do to fix this? What can we do to salvage this stuff? And I find that Dan tends to maybe be a little bit more like, fuck it, it's over. I ain't putting up with that bullshit. I'm too old for this shit. Blah, 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 blah. And you know what? There's a lot of reasons why he would be right in that scenario. There's a lot of reasons why I would be right in that scenario. So I think it's all going to come down to a balance of what you guys want in your view. So, there was one particular reel that really got my attention. And that was this woman being asked this question. And then she answered. And I kind of went like, what? No. So it says, name one thing that women created. And she quickly replies, 8 billion people. And I'm like, nope, you did not create 8 billion people. Sorry. But it's just amazing to me that it gets there. And to create that sort of thing, that sort of thinking, that sort of mentality, it takes two to tango. It really does. And, here's the interesting part. We talk about two people creating a life. So here's the interesting thing, because we talk about parasites in their simple format. Parasites are interesting because they're a simple life form. They evolve very quickly because they're so simple, they're so small, and there's not a whole lot of working parts to them. So it's relatively quick for them to evolve and adapt and to overcome. Okay, so a complex creature like humans, for example, how do we evolve so quickly while also ensuring our survivability? We throw away half our genetic material and bond with another half of genetic material from someone else. That's how we do it. So through sexual reproduction, we create moments of evolution and moments of tying ourselves with a totally different genome. So it's only half of their genome and half of ours. And in order for it to work, one's got to be male, one has to be female. One has mitochondrial DNA, the other one has the the Y chromosome, the X chromosome. There's a whole slew of stuff that goes into it. So it becomes very, very complicated quickly. But the reality is you're taking what we call a dichotomous relationship, two competing interests, and you bind them into one. So without that dichotomous relationship, without those competing interests, we need each other to survive. So with that in mind, we don't survive as a species without relying on each other. And I think that's the moral of the story this week, is because I think a lot of times people are lost on this fact that, oh, I'll choose the bear. Yeah, okay. Good luck, Godspeed. You're going to die. You will have no lineage. You will have no legacy. That's the hard part. That's the hard part. So, oh, Steve, really? Dogs? Mm-mm. So another reel that I saw, funnier than hell, which was, what's a 3-letter word that starts with gas? Go ahead. I'll wait. Anyone? Country, you might get this one. Steve, you might get this one. I know you guys. I know you guys want to. Are you ready? Are you ready? Car. 3-letter word that starts with gas is car. And probably. Steve, probably. Let's talk about the Disneyland dad syndrome, since we're going to talk about population decline as well. So the Disneyland dad syndrome is interesting because dad gets every other weekend. So if you get dad and he's only every other weekend, he has to maximize his time. He doesn't get to share in the burden of raising the kids because he's not there to help with the homework part. The homework part is probably the biggest component, right? The interrelationship skills, the moments in time where they're really going into, hey, I'm having this conflict with my friend. I don't know what to do. Mom, what should I do? What should I do, Mom? Blah, 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 blah. And then, and the interesting thing is Mom just goes, well, if I was you, I'd do this. I'd go, So as dads, what happens is we don't get that opportunity, right? So what we do is we have to create Disneyland for our children. And we have to maximize and make every moment memorable, right? That's at least what we feel like we have to do, because we're dealt a shitty hand. So with this thought process, what happens is you go in and you're not able to engage. You're not really able to have those comments with your kids. You're not able to have those meaningful interactions that really go, oh, guess what? Hey, Dad, I really like so-and-so. Okay. Or how would you handle this conflict that I'm having with my friend? I don't know what to do. Well, okay. What's interesting is moms, not always, but typically, they want to go in and they want to explain this, and they want to go, I would do this, this, and this. And we tell you why. Dads typically prefer to ask leading questions. Well, okay, why do you suppose they feel that way? Why do you feel that way? Okay, so if you have that interest, they have that interest, Is there a way to meet in the middle and compromise? Is there a way that you both can have your cake and eat it too? Dichotomous relationship. Is there a way to have two competing interests and still get both what you want / need? Your interest is, hey, I want to resolve this matter with my friend. Their interest is I really want to do this with my friend as well, but I also want this. Okay. How do we meet in the middle? That's really what we're talking about here. So I'd look at the pros and cons of the options. Exactly. How do we get to the pros and the cons? We have to ask the questions. Okay, so is that a benefit or is that a detriment? Are there more pros or are there more cons? Sometimes even when you do have more pros than cons, there's sufficient number of cons to make the return on the investment, as long as I can eat your steak. As long as there's a big enough return on the investment. I mean, here's the thing. If I can have a larger return on the investment, you always want that benefit, right? So it always comes down to a balancing test. It always comes down to, hey, is this really going to be of great benefit? And, I think a lot of people, it's lost on them. It really is. People don't want to get there. They don't want to have those moments in time where they're like, hey, I don't like it. So when you're talking about a Disneyland dad versus a dad that's involved actively, the problem is the one that's involved actively is always going to be 50% or more. And that's why parental involvement is so critical to what Dan, Lindsay, and I are trying to accomplish. I would say that the parental involvement portion is probably the key to the whole thing. We need to reduce the conflict in family court. We need to reduce the financial investment of the government into the court. We need to reduce the level of unnecessary litigation, the unnecessary conflict, contention, cost, everything, all of it's got to go. That's where our goal is right now. And if we can get there and we can make it more efficient, guess what? You're lowering taxes. Guess what else you're doing? You're lowering conflict. Guess what else you're doing? You're focusing on the kids and putting the kids first, and you're not worrying about all this ancillary bullshit. So the next thing I would tell you is we talk about mediation. Mediation is an interesting one. Mediation is something that the courts usually require when you go into a court case. And that's a hard one, right? And I feel like this gets boring really quick. Mediation portion. What do you guys think? Do you think mediation really works? Do you think mediation is of benefit? Is it meaningful? Is it something that you guys would get behind? Is it something that you guys would willingly do if you're involved in a custody situation? Is it something that you would look at? And I would tell you that from my perspective, mediation only works when both sides are interested in getting somewhere, when they're interested in getting it ended. And there requires some level of fairness to be involved. So what would you guys do in a situation where you needed to be fair? But do you feel like you would necessarily abandon? Would you abandon your interest in something, even if you didn't think it was fair, but you thought it would get the job done? It would get it ended? Get the case done? Tell me your thoughts on that one. Steve, you got any input? Country, you got any input? Houston, are you even around? Well, are more divorces contested or uncontested? More divorces are contested. Divorces are usually not uncontested. I would say that only 0.1% is uncontested. I think it also depends on the mediator too, because the mediator is key to this negotiation process. Are they able to pull out meaningful issues and not get hung up on these ancillary things that are petty? You know, what's really driving the train here? Is it retribution? Is it vindictiveness? I think that's where we really need to be at, and I think that's where we really need to consider. So, things like that. I mean, what do I know? Just some country bumpkin that lives in the middle of Iowa. Due to common law marriage, my parents had to get divorced twice when they were only married once. Ooh, that's an interesting. And was that in Oklahoma, Maggie? Is that where you're from? I feel like that's where you're from. I feel like Oklahoma's sticking out in my head for some reason. I know in Iowa we have common law marriage, but you have to say that you're married. And you have to live together for so long and hold out to be married. And you also have to have commingled funds or commingled assets or both. So, that's how my observations, women need to make people feel the same pain that they feel. Oh, sure was Oklahoma. Okay. Now, your observations are women need to make people feel the same pain that they feel. That's an interesting observation, because in my head, what happens is I have quite the opposite effect. I don't want people to feel what I've ever felt. I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. I think that's why it's a cautionary tale. Yeah, they lived together for 10 years. See, for me, it's a cautionary tale of, you don't want to live with my sins. I don't want you to live with those sins. I don't want you to have to do the things that I did. But I think that's natural for a male. I'm not a woman, so it's hard for me to relate, What do you do in that situation? Oof. Can you give me more insight, Maggie? I'd love to hear more insight from you on this one. Steve, it is very interesting. It just blows my mind that, because it puts a different perspective on it. Why would someone want someone to feel their pain? It's very selfish and self-centered in a way. I don't understand that. I wouldn't want someone to suffer like I'm suffering or I suffered. Yeah. Another thing is when we're talking about courting, we're talking about children courting, or when you're courting after a divorce or after. Women are vindictive AF. Oh, yeah. That's true. That's true. And they feel justified because they were hurt first. Really? That's curious. Ooh. Justified's an interesting word. So it creates resentment, and that resentment that they feel is this huge weight that they carry around that sort of cuts into them all at the same time while they carry it around, and that justification is what fuels it. So it's like they're carrying around this huge weight. It's extremely heavy. It's extremely cutting. It's extremely jagged and you feel it everywhere you go. And then you carry it with you everywhere you go, and it's very heavy. But when you let it go, can you imagine how freeing that would be? I mean, I think people don't understand that forgiveness and redemption is not for that other person, but it's for you and your self preservation. It helps you build those borders, helps you build those boundaries, helps you free yourself. Oh, yes, Steve, that is true. So that's very, very accurate. Dan's most recent video did say women treat other women worse than they treat men. That's true. And then my wife sitting next to me says the same emphatically. Ooh. Yes, I would agree with that. What's interesting is I don't find men wanting to cut. Men, oh, this is a hard thing. What I dislike is the keyboard warriors because it sets up the sociopathy, the psychopathy, like the psychopaths come on. And what happens for me is they're keyboard warriors, so they don't have the nerve to like publish their name. So you can't ever refute them without having any sort of meaningful discussion. It's just an attack upon attack upon attack upon attack, and it's like a death by a thousand cuts. And they think they're getting somewhere, but they're really not. They're just perpetuating a problem by pouring a metric shit ton of gasoline on it, so it doesn't work. I think we need. That's an interesting take. Here's an interesting. Okay, so country. Here's an interesting one for you. We handled a divorce last year, and in that divorce, it was these guys, 50+ year marriage. They were in their 70s, and he was a jerk to her. He was an asshole, and she was this sweet woman who could live with the infidelity that he was doing. She could live with a lot of stuff. He was never home anyway, so it didn't matter. She was in the marital home, blah, 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 blah. What drove her to divorce him was he turned the kids against her. And when that happened, it created this big like kerfuffle. And it was just an awful, awful experience. And so while they were married, he had this huge farming operation. She always took care of the kids. The kids were always provided for. She kept the house up. She did everything. And then he built this trucking empire on top of this farming operation. And we're talking millions. And I agree. It is a starting place. And I think in a situation like this, it would work for a marriage that was 10 years or less. Honest, but not a 50-year marriage. I think on a 50-year marriage, it's kind of like at that point, you're kind of like, okay, I've been through the ringer. I'm 70 years old and I can't go out and get a real full-time job. How do I do that? That's where I'm at with it. How does a 68, 69, 70-year-old woman go get a job when she doesn't have an education and her only qualifications are she cooked, cleaned, and did all the house chores? I mean, it's hard to translate that. I mean, I think those skills are marketable. I would hire someone like that, but not everyone is me. So, food for thought. Um, they need things from men though, so they have to play nice. Ooh. You know, Maggie, you make a great point. It's like the hand that bites you, you know, you know, or the hand that feeds you. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So, um, you know, that is 100% true. And Steve, you're right. I agree. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. You kind of have to go with this. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that I think we're missing the boat on both sides. You know, I think it comes down to just doing things the right way and just being good humans. Why can't we just be good to each other? You know, that brings up an interesting point. Steve, you brought up the infidelity, the cheating, how it was all started, perpetuated by women. What was interesting to me that I watched a little bit earlier was James Sexton talked about how social media was kind of like the breeding ground for it. So it gave open access to all these ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends. It gave a lot of like opportunities for like these connections to be um you know, I would say leveraged in a very ungood way, a bad way. Um and to me it was very enlightening because I always viewed things like having my own social media account as that's my realm. That's my like network of friends. Then there's, you know, my significant others. That's hers. And then you'd come across these accounts where they'd both be man and wife, and it's like, okay, is there trust issues? Was one person unfaithful? You know, stuff like that. And it presented some interesting questions to me that I never thought about before. And, you know, I think we've all seen those accounts where you have the husband and the wife on the same Facebook page. And some, you know, it's just the husband isn't involved in social media, but the wife is. So it's a way for the husband to have social media connection to the world, but the wife runs it. That's an interesting way of like looking at it. Then there are those where you know infidelity took place, and you know that's the only way that the two can be together online. So now there's these trust issues that are already inherent. What's going on here? So right now, hedonistic approaches. Yeah, it's very hedonistic and very instant gratifications. Big. Um, you know, country, that's an excellent thing because it's an excellent point because it teaches us that the credit world using credit cards and stuff like that and that instant gratification is something that we should like be looking at going after, and we wonder why we're in the financial state that we're in as a nation because we focus too much on borrowing. Wait until they that's the one these days. Yeah, and then wait until they figure out that they can't eat money and there isn't anyone to make the food anymore to buy. Ooh, that's an interesting point too. Mm-mm-mm. Doesn't just come by Amazon, does it? Someone's got to take it out of that field, process it, put it into a box, ship it for it to go to that warehouse in the first place. But before that can even happen, someone's got to plow the ground, fertilize the ground, plant the seeds, grow the crop, tend to the crop. There's so much more that goes into this that we lose sight of. It's unfortunate. Well said, country. Well said. Yay. There's probably, hold on, very true. How about the population decline leading to the lack of medications? Because there's not enough people to make them. Oh, well, I mean, yes. And if you're in an area like country, you're in Minnesota, I'm in Iowa, our populations are older. Iowa's population's substantially older. What's funny is we don't have enough young people to offset that stuff. And it kind of ties into this idea that, you never want to abandon the moral or the strategic high ground. So what that means is you don't want to lower yourself to someone else's standards because they're just being petty and you need to be petty with them. You don't need to do that. You don't need to keep pace with that shit. What's interesting here, in this situation, we forget about where we come from. And country and Steve, you make an excellent point about a farm kid, because a farm kid knows from the field to the dinner table how everything happens, how it gets to market, how things are transported across the United States, how in some cases things are transported across the world. What is alarming to me is sometimes my kids, I find, take for granted things like food. When we go hunting or we go fishing and I get irate because they want to waste something. The thing is you don't waste. Like, it's kind of a frustrating notion for me. So, the kids will ask me, so Dad, what are you doing with all those bones? And why are you like cooking the bone stock out? Well, we're not wasting that marrow. That marrow is good, nutritious value. Things like that. I mean, let's get back to, where you came from and remain humble. Because if we remain humble and we remain in touch with the world, then there's a lot of benefit to how we end up as humans, which is interesting. A lot of times what we find is people want to lose touch with where they came from because they don't want to be associated with it. Truth be told, I'm poor white trash. That's where I came from. Nothing I'm going to do about it. I did not come from affluent families. So I have friends who have kids now, but they don't have the same number of kids to the adult number. It's about 3 adults to 2 kids. Not a sustainable number for our current system of life, and mostly girls. Bone soup, baby. Bone broth. Yep. And I still make pork gravy from pork. So, 1.6 kids per. Oh. Well, I have a very red neck. I go out in the sun a lot. But it's been cold these last few days, and I'm kind of irritated with it because it's August still. And I'm expecting like 80 some degrees, maybe even 90. Nope, 70. What in the heck? What in the heck, country? Yeah. I like I like a good old redneck. Tell you what, a little bit of sweet corn and a little bit of grain yeast, and there you go. You're off to the races then. Anyway, let's get back to what are some things that you guys have encountered, like phrases or euphemisms, whatever you want to call it, or analogies or things that you would hear older folks that you um, can't fit a camel through the eye of a needle, or you can't make money on borrowed money, or something like that. What's something that you guys grew up on that was a phrase that you would hear an older guy or an older gal say, stuff like that. I mean, there was there's quite a bit of the old joke about 100 men on an island with one woman. Extinction results, but 100 women on an island with one man, society survives. I call BS. 100 women on an island will fight and fail to thrive. I agree. But what's interesting is I think nature and time will equalize herself out. I think figures it out. Human nature, or nature period, has a funny way of figuring it all out. Whether it be by pheromones, or it can detect that there are too many women or whatever, you'll have a lot of boys, and then it'll start to equalize itself out. But then there's a lot of inbreeding I think you would have to worry about then too. So, I mean, here, I think Holstein cattle, all of Holstein cattle, can trace their genome back to 2 bulls. 2. So they're the most inbred breed of cattle that we know of. Yes, country, you are correct. Can't take a horse to water, but you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yes, true. You can't force someone to do something that they don't want to do. That's true. Being pissed off is better than being pissed on. There's one. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Actions speak louder than words. A rolling stone gathers no moss. Ooh, there's another one. A stitch in time saves 9. So it's better to address a small problem immediately than to wait for it to become a larger one, is what that one means. There was a time eons ago when scientists figured out that there were only something like 87 humans left. Fascinating. We also had that point in our ancestry where the human population almost went extinct, which is why you can't marry your cousin, unlike other mammals. Okay. Don't count your chickens before they've hatched. Don't make plans based on something that hasn't happened yet. Actions speak louder than words. We all know what that means. A rolling stone gathers no moss. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Basically, you can't make a high quality object out of poor quality material. That's the time I'm referring to. For some reason, I feel like it was. I think I know what you're talking about. It was about 900,000 years ago. It was identified as a bottleneck event. Represented a loss of 98.7% of the population, and they believe that the population dropped to approximately 1,280 people. Curious. Yeah, it was about 930,000 years ago. Huh. Interesting. Okay. The apple never falls far from the tree. Flowers grow best in the sun, not the shade. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. Barking up the wrong tree. Beggars can't be choosers. A watch pot never boils. Ooh. That's funny. Wisdom and experience. Well, analysis. Yeah. I believe it had to do with there was less genetic diversity in that period of time. So many hands make light work. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Oh, I don't know. Is it sad? Never look a gift horse in the mouth. That's one I like to use. There must be a pony somewhere in that pile of shit. Oh, don't throw a baby out with the bathwater. Early to bed and early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. Any job worth doing is worth doing well. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Can't never could. Oh, that's a good one. Can't never could. You'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. That is so true. The early bird catches the worm. A rising tide lifts all boats. Make hay while the sun shines. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Oh boy. Fortune favors the brave. I've heard fortune favors the bold, but same thing. Strike while the iron is hot. Makes sense to me. Every day, every dog has its day. Here's one. Every dog has its day. Sun shines on a dog's ass every now and then. That's one I remember. Hurry up. We're burning daylight. Don't cry over spilled milk. A rolling stone never gathers no moss. Like herding cats, one man's trash is another man's treasure. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Beggars can't be choosers. This isn't my first rodeo. You're barking up the wrong tree. The apple never falls far from the tree. You're a day late and $1 short. It'll all come out in the wash. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. That's a damn good one. Don't put the cart before the horse. Don't count your chickens before they've hatched. A watch pot never boils. Don't be ugly. Too many cooks spoil the gravy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't take any wooden nickels. Don't buy a pig in a poke. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Don't mistake endurance for hospitality. If you lie down with dogs, you'll get up with fleas. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Pretty is as pretty does. A trouble shared is a trouble halved. Home is where the heart is. Confession is good for the soul. Share and share alike. You're the bee's knees. I love you a bushel and a peck and a hug around the neck. Bless your heart. You're the cat's meow. Don't eat yellow snow. True, kids, true. Don't eat the yellow snow. Apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's more than one way to skin a cat. If it had been a snake, it would have bitten you. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Doesn't cut the mustard. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't judge a book by its cover. Birds of a feather flock together, especially if you go where the huskies go. Yep. You're preaching to the choir more than you can shake a stick at. It doesn't amount to a hill of beans. As I live and breathe, oh my stars, give me some sugar. Goodness gracious, heavens to Betsy. While I swanning. There's no accounting for taste. There's a lot there. So, let's see here. What else have we got going on today? When you're picking somebody to date, to see, to like hang out with, maybe even to have a relationship with, what are some things that you guys look at when you're considering getting involved with someone? What do you guys look at? Curious to know your thoughts on that, because yes, heart bombs, please show us some love today. Show us some, hit that like button, hit the heart, show us some love. One of the things I look at is, how does she treat her ex? Because I kind of apply a balancing test to it, right? How nasty will she get versus how will she stand her ground? Those are how does she treat me? How does she treat you? Yeah, that's another one too, right? But country, when you agree, we talk about this in some form or fashion. Would you or would you not agree that in some way, somehow, it would be one of those things where you're literally like looking at someone and going, yeah, but we're in that honeymoon phase. We're in that, oh, I love you. You love me. I can't look past these red flags. Don't you think? I don't know if Maggie abandoned us. Maggie, did you abandon us, or are you just listening? Are you just listening, Maggie? Because I don't know. What do they say about the ex? Ooh, that's a very good question. And that could be for a double-edged, that could be a dual purpose thing, right? Where are they reasonable in how they assess it? Or are they irrational? Is it, are they still broken, or are they still involved or still in love with their ex, but they're disappointed and they never really got out of it and you're the rebound? I mean, those are sorts of things. I can't disagree with you there. Those are the sorts of things I'd be looking at. I really would. I don't know. Do you want to be the rebound? Do you want to be someone that got them through and then they abandon you and go on to the next thing, right? Is that where you want to be? And I think that's a fair question to ask, because there's this level of involvement in humanity. I think, a lot of people have a hard time with this one. So, ask to meet the ex as well and see how they act around them. Especially if they have kids. Yep. I remember I was dating this one girl years and years ago. She had an ex, and I was always told, I gotta worry about this ex because he's crazy. He likes to start fights with folks. I was like, okay. I never understood it, but whatever. He was always a real jealous guy, blah, 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 blah. And so I went to this very public event with this gal I was dating. And the thing is when you're 6'4" and you're a big presence, you're a robust young man. Back in my day, this was the interesting thing. We were at, okay, so the gal I was dating, her brother had a band. We went to this bar to watch this band, and he was good. He was there too, and I was there with her, and they had a kid together, and they had all, whatever. There was some history, and I was always told, like, he would come screw with me. He would always come start some shit with me. The guy never came towards me because I'm 6'4". I'm a big dude. Not only that, I'm built and ready to fight. Everyone knew I was in the military. Everyone knew I was, one of those big dudes. So, it was one of those things where I just go, I really have a hard time with it, believing that this guy would do anything. He never did anything. And I think a lot of it has to do with you present your, what's the word? You present the image. And here's the thing. If you're a formidable force, who wants to start a fight with a formidable force? Even if I couldn't whoop that guy's ass, even if I couldn't, he was going to feel it on the way down. So would you really want to be, I don't know, would you really want to trouble with that? It's kind of like that. Are you going to get your return on investment? So yeah, I mean, a lot of things kind of happen. So there's that. This one's kind of mundane. It's kind of a low energy show. There's not a whole lot of back and forth. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Just going through the motions today, I suppose. I don't like going through the motions. You guys want to talk about anything like serious? Or do you want to keep it lighthearted? Do you want to talk about work ethic and kids these days? I mean, country did already say, back in my day. So, what do you guys think? Give me some feedback. I like it. Steve, you've been rather quiet for an episode. I'm not seeing Houston at all today. That's curious. No snorts today. Oh, she probably needs a good laugh. She's been having a heck of a week. So, yeah, I heard she was sick before the weekend started. They were sick all weekend, and then it just, dealing with drama. Yeah, nothing wrong with a slow day. You're right. It is Wednesday. Today was an early dismissal from school. Every Wednesday is an early dismissal from schools around here. Excuse me. So the kids they roam the house and they kind of cause a little bit of havoc and chaos. And I'm okay with that because I'd rather have my kids here causing havoc and chaos than somewhere else. And at least I know I can control it. So you went to uphill. Back in my day, you went to school uphill both ways in 3 feet of snow. Is that right? 5 hills or 5 miles both ways. You have kids, you get sick. Yep. School's like a petri dish. And when one has a virus, the other ones catch it like fire. Remember, norovirus is something that's usually yearly, comes out. The flu is something usually yearly. Get that once or twice a year. Cold is several times. So it's either rhinovirus or the old corona. Your kids live with you full time, Curtis. So I have 2 adult kids, 2 step kids, and then I have 2 kids that currently go back and forth between my house and their mom's. So we have 50-50 more or less. I mean, so kids spend at least half their time here. They spend at least half their time at their mom's. I mean, pretty much. And here's the thing, their mom lives like 5 miles away, so if they were to come back to town and hang out, not that big of a deal. Country, that is so true. Yeah. So people do common cold is such a wonderful thing. But I think part of the problem is there's so many variants, and then there's like several different viruses that cause it, right? So you don't realize you can have the rhinovirus one week, then RSV the next week, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, I got RSV now, and RSV in adults is way different than RSV in like little kids. RSV in little kids, it's like and it requires oxygen and albuterol and all of that other crap, and it's like, and then you have the old corona COVID. So, and then can't skateboard on a gravel road. That's why we got blacktop here in town. That's the one benefit. You want to minimize colds, get your kids vitamin D tested. If it's below 6 nanograms per milliliter, supplement. I've had 2 mild colds in over a decade. That's interesting. Now, what's your source of vitamin D when you supplement? Because if you use synthetic vitamin D, I've heard it's not the best. It's the same as synthetic vitamin D3 is the same as vitamin D2 chemically. So I'm trying to understand this sort of stuff. Steve, you seem like the guy that might actually know this answer. Country, how far do you live from how far do you live from Mankato? Because you, if I remember right, you closest town to you, the closest big town to you is Mankato. Tend to get a cold each November at the end of the trucking construction season. So, 16 miles south of Mankato. All right. I think I actually have a client that lives in Mankato. He's got an Iowa case. If I remember correctly, he has an Iowa case in Dickinson County. So it's like Spirit Lake. If I remember correctly. I think so. So. But yeah. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, oh, that's right. Okay. I forget that Mankato's that far over to the east. So, yeah. Yeah. It's fun, fun, fun. So, Steve, what's your source of vitamin D? Have you found it? Anything, Bueller? A town of German blood, but Scotch. Oh, you know, I have 82% German DNA. That's the interesting part about me. And it's all from like this one little area in southern Germany. It's kind of crazy. So pure formulas. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look at that, Steve, because that's fascinating to me. So all of District 7 for the Minnesota DOT and half of District 6. Got no idea what those districts are, but okay. What's funny to me is I have been all over a lot of places. In storm chasing, I get to go everywhere. I mean, I get to go down to Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana. I get to go everywhere, so I have a lot of fun when I go. I'll tell you this: the worst place to go storm chasing, in my opinion, Arkansas. The terrain is difficult. It is very difficult to go storm chasing in Arkansas. South part of the state by about 3 counties. All right. Got it. That makes sense. Hmm. You know, I don't know. Don't know much else, I guess. Oh, um, I guess. You guys got anything else? We might cut it short today. It's making me a little sad that I'm not at the beach with my grandbabies. Wait, I don't have any. I better not have any. Not yet. Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna cut it short in the stream a little bit early. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. If you see Houston, say hi for me. I'm going to be country. You can get a hold of me on Instagram or email me or whatever. So, and Steve, thanks for the input. I really appreciate it. Maggie, I think you cut out a little early, but hope you have a great rest of your week and hopefully you'll enjoy Oklahoma. So I suppose I will. Whoa. Yikes. Found a female alligator gave birth without a male. Nature will do what it needs to do. I'll tell you that. So anyway, say it could unlock some questions about dinos. It's true. Just like Jurassic Park. All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week. And hopefully the whole crew will be back. So, all right. Have a great day.